Hi everybody, Mario Francisco Robles, MFR here with you, and this is a sort of on-the-spot rant I want to drop for you all. That's why I didn't get all dressed up. There's no suit and tie, no three-piece this time. I just want to share some thoughts with you today. Because this week I scrapped doing a proper episode of the El Fanboy podcast, but I've been backed up. And there's stuff to say, so I'm gonna just lay a little of it out there for you. I'm gonna save some of it for next week. Probably a slightly more well thought out version of what I'm gonna say today. But for right now, here's what I have to get off my chest. People keep misdiagnosing the issue with Justice League, and they keep blaming the wrong people. It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. So let me make it very clear right now. The only people who deserve blame for what happened here with Justice League and with the DC Films universe as a whole are the executives who were in charge of Warner Brothers leading up to the release of Batman v Superman, and to a lesser extent, Zack Snyder himself. Now, I don't blame Zack Snyder on a personal level. I don't blame him even as an artist. He did the best he could. But the issue is that his vision was always going to be polarizing. It was always going to appeal to a smaller subset of people than your general wide audience that these kinds of movies require. And if yesterday's reports are anything to be taken seriously, Greg Silverman gave him no creative oversight. He barely paid attention to the scripts, just kind of rubber stamped whatever it was that Snyder wanted to do, thinking, oh, it's got Superman, it's got Batman, it's going to make a mint, I don't have to worry about it. That guy deserves a whole lot of blame, and he kind of took himself out of the gene pool late last year when he resigned, which brought on Toby Emmerich to be the president over there at Warner Brothers. But so let's talk about that a little bit. Justice League opened low, but it didn't open low because of the behind-the-scenes drama. It didn't open low because Joss Whedon made some choices that certain people didn't like. No, remember, general audiences didn't know about any of that. They didn't know. Okay? Not everyone's like us. Not everyone is like you or I. If you're watching this, I lump you in with me. You are someone who goes on the internet and goes, here's this thing that I really like, a movie, a character, a comic book, a cartoon, and I'm going to go on the internet and learn everything there is to know about it. And then I'm going to check every day, and I'm going to feel very passionately one way or the other on the things that I see there. Most people don't do that. Okay? Casual audiences, they just go, hey, that looks pretty cool. I saw a trailer. I want to check that out. And those are the kind of people that Zack Snyder does not appeal to. Okay? Just to kind of put things into perspective for you. Okay? With Batman v Superman, he had every opportunity in the world to have this huge runaway success. That film had everything going for it. It probably should have cleared $1 billion. It has two of the most famous characters of all time. It has the introduction of Wonder Woman for the first time ever on the big screen. And it features two storylines that are in the best-selling comic books ever, okay? The Death of Superman, The Dark Knight Returns, everyone has those books. Even people who've never collected a comic book, a lot of them will have those books in their bookshelf, right? Those were all-time bestsellers. So this movie had all these different things going for it, and what happened? Everyone showed up with the general curiosity because they love these characters in weekend one. By weekend two, it lost almost 70% of its audience, all right? 69%. That is a much higher than usual percentage. That means that general audience members were put off by this movie, okay? Just to sort of put into perspective for you, when Captain America Civil War came out, which, that's probably a good comparison, right? It's the same idea, two beloved heroes fighting against each other, plus a bunch of other very important characters being introduced. Because remember, Batman v Superman also had Doomsday and Lex Luthor, okay? It had a lot going for it. I'm sorry, I'm getting a little sidetracked here, but I'm speaking to you from the heart, so bear with me. Captain America Civil War, it dropped only 59%. Okay, it opened higher than Batman v Superman and dropped less. That means that it did that nice little delicate balancing act where it brought in mainstream people and kept them coming because the buzz was good. Batman v Superman didn't do that. Only the hardest of the hardcore gave that movie a chance. Okay, so Snyder doesn't make films for the masses. With Justice League, what happened was they tried to turn one of his little niche movies into something that would be a little more fitting for the masses. But mind you, the masses didn't know that they did any of this. All the masses had to go on were the trailers and the track record. So just to kind of give you an example, I treat my wife as a very good barometer for these kinds of things. Because even though she's married to me, a maniac who cares way too much about this stuff, she herself doesn't follow any of it. She's more of like the casual cinema goer. She's the kind of person who'll see a trailer and go, hey, Mario, we should check that out. I want to see that next Thor movie with you. Okay, cool, let's go do it. But I don't talk to her about this stuff. I kind of let her stay outside of the bubble. She's a special ed teacher in the Bronx. She's got much bigger fish to fry than who's playing Batman in the next movie. So I don't tend to talk to her about this stuff. So she tends to be a good person who's close to me but outside of the bubble. So when I ask her about certain movies, it tends to give me a good idea how they're going to perform. And here's how Justice League went. I mentioned to her, hey, I'm going to go see Justice League. I'm throwing together a watch party with some of my podcast listeners. It should be very exciting. She goes, oh, I thought that movie came out already. I go, no, that was Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice. She goes, oh, didn't that suck? I'm like, yeah, it was kind of a turd. And you still want to see Justice League? I'm like, well, yeah, I kind of have to. She was like, all right. That sort of reaction, I think, says a lot. It means a lot of general audience members who might have been intrigued by this remembered Batman v Superman and were left with such sort of disinterest that Justice League was barely on their radar, okay? And that has nothing to do with the reshoots. That has nothing to do with Joss Whedon. That has to do with the fact that people lost faith in this franchise. It stopped getting people excited. People now see that Ben Affleck in the suit, and they associate it with Batman v Superman, which was a divisive movie. They see Superman in his suit, Henry Cavill, after 4 years of seeing him look constipated on posters and in the movies, they've lost interest in his Superman. So Justice League did not have that wide appeal. So that's why the box office was so low. It has nothing to do with Whedon, and it has nothing to do with Warner Brothers tinkering with the film, because that's another misnomer. People want to blame the tinkering. And they go, see, how did that work out for you? You did all this changing, and you moved away from Snyder's vision, and it still didn't perform well. Wake up. By the way, that's my Christmas clock in the background if you hear something singing. But wake up. Okay? People... Sorry, the clock threw me off for a second. Yes, so the tinkering actually helped. The tinkering that you're complaining about actually helped. Because get this, the reviews were better. They moved into that 40 range. And you know what I always say? If it's between 40 and 60 on Rotten Tomatoes, that doesn't mean it's a bad movie. That means it's kind of an even split. Nearly half the people who saw it recommend it. Nearly half don't. So really go see it if you're very interested in the movie itself. If it was something that was naturally intriguing for you, something in the 40 to 60 range means it's like a take it or leave it thing. So go check it out if you'd like. So it got better reviews than Batman v Superman, which was like 26 or 27. Remember, I'm doing this all off the top of my head, so it's 26 or 27 to the best of my recollection. And the cinema score given by fans is also better than Batman v Superman. So in other words, the reshoots did everything the studio wanted. It made critics happier, and it made audiences happier. So you can't blame the reshoots. In fact, had they left the film alone, as some of you keep claiming they should have done, y'all should have just left Zack Snyder alone and let him complete his vision and do his thing. And now look what's happened to you because you messed with it. If they would have left it alone, it would have opened to less, and it would have gotten a worse critical score and probably a worse cinema score. It'd probably get a cinema score close to Batman v Superman, another sort of ho-hum B, the same B that audiences gave Green Lantern. Just think about that, okay? People don't tend to love Zack Snyder's movies. They just don't. So the cinema score more than likely would have been about on par with Dawn of Justice. The reviews would have also been worse, and the box office would have been less. Why? Well, because Snyder's movies are always very long. All right, there's rumors that this film was supposed to be anywhere from 2.5 to 2 hours and 50 minutes at one point before Kevin Tsujihara stepped in and said, no, I want a 2-hour movie and that's it. This movie was going to be longer, and that impacts box office in a major way. Because the longer the movie is, the fewer times a theater can run it in a single day. So let's play that scenario out, shall we? Had Zack Snyder's movie been just left alone, as so many of you seem to think would have been the right thing to do, it would have gotten worse reviews. The critics, the people probably would have liked it about as much as they like Batman v Superman, and the box office would have been less because it would have run fewer times per day, so that is fewer tickets sold. And they're taking that improved cinema score all the way to the bank, because a good, stronger cinema score means better word of mouth. Better word of mouth means fewer weekend-to-weekend drops. So when Zack Snyder made Man of Steel, it dropped 65% for weekend 2. When Zack Snyder made Batman v Superman, it dropped 69% in its second weekend. Justice League, with the improved word of mouth and the overall better taste it's leaving in the mouths of people, thanks to a lot of the tweaks that were made, it cooled only 56% in its second weekend. So if you're Warner Brothers, you're going, thank God we tinkered with Justice League so much, because even though it's still not doing that well, it's still doing better than Snyder's movie. I'm sorry if that hurts to hear, but it's just facts. So no one is mad right now at Joss Whedon. No one in the creative think tank over at Warner Brothers is regretting messing with the movie, because by all accounts, all of the messing worked. It didn't make it great. It would have involved a much longer production cycle. They would have had to have delayed the movie and really given Whedon a chance to just make a whole new movie out of the thing. And they didn't want to do that because they'd already invested around $300 million on the thing. So considering what they had to work with, this is a soft win for Warner Brothers. I know it sounds insane to say that, but this actually is a soft win for them. Had they left it alone, it would have been far worse. So, in closing, the people to blame are folks like Greg Silverman, the executives at Warner Brothers, whoever it was that gave Zack Snyder the keys to the castle. Whoever said, hey, Snyder, I know that your last movie before joining DC, you know, the Sucker Punch was a bomb. And I know that Watchmen disappointed us here in our very own studio lot with subpar reviews and a disappointing box office. But you know what, Mr. Snyder? You're the guy. You're the guy who's going to lead us to the promised land somehow. Whoever did that, and whoever looked at the receipts from Man of Steel, a film that got worse reviews than Superman Returns. I hate to bring up Superman Returns because I know that in and of itself is a whole other bag of insanity of the way people feel about that movie. But it did worse critically than Superman Returns. And domestically speaking, this is a figure you have to pay attention to, okay? Domestically speaking, which is where the studio makes the bulk of its money, adjusted for inflation, it made only around $36 million more than Superman Returns. So Man of Steel was not this huge runaway success. Okay, it was a hit. I'm not going to take away from it. I'm not going to call it a flop. It's not a disappointment. I mean, it probably is a disappointment because it ultimately made in the mid-600s, and this is coming from the men who gave you the Dark Knight trilogy. And remember, those last two Dark Knight movies made over $1 billion each. So Warner Brothers is probably thinking, hey, you get Superman, one of the most beloved fictional characters of all time. You get the men who made the Dark Knight trilogy. And you're going to make a movie that's close to $1 billion. Instead, it didn't even crack 7. So Warner Brothers, somebody over there, saw Man of Steel, saw that it made pretty good money, made critics dislike it, But, you know, it get polarized, split the critics, I should say. I don't want to mischaracterize it. I said something in the 50s is a take it or leave it thing. But it's, you know, so critics were less enthusiastic. The box office was pretty impressive. Nothing special. And if anyone was paying attention to the way fans were actually talking about the movie, remember, that film split people. To this day, people are still bitching and moaning about the collateral damage in that movie and whether or not he should have killed Zod and whether or not this Superman was cold-blooded. Like, here we are 4 years later and that's still happening. So that movie was not a runaway success by any stretch of the imagination. Whoever looked at that and said, well, not only are we going to invite Snyder back, but we're going to let him be the architect for the entire shared DC Films universe. That guy is to blame. All right. So I got that off my chest. It felt good. It felt good. Yes, if you enjoyed that, feel free to subscribe here to my YouTube channel. Go over to Stitcher and TuneIn and Apple Podcasts and all that sort of good stuff. Subscribe to the El Fanboy Podcast, because I do this sort of thing every week on that show. And it's been a hell of a ride, a hell of an 8 months for those of you who've been supporting me. And also, elfanboy.com is starting to become a thing. I used to just use it as a place where people could find out about my podcast. But in the last 2.5 weeks, I have released not one, but 2 scoops. Scoops that have been picked up and have gone all over the web, have become these big trending topics. Your boy's been breaking stories over at El Fanboy. I'm also starting to stretch my writing muscles again and write columns the way I used to do. So visit elfanboy.com. And if you are one of my longtime supporters and you're happy to see me doing well and keeping at this, feel free to visit patreon.com/elfanboy. I've gotten, last night another patron came on board. I try to do this so that it's crowd-funded. And because I want to be a voice for you, the fanboys. I don't want any. I'm trying to avoid corporate backing or any of that stuff, because then it starts getting a little bit murky. So that's it. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned. More to come. El Fanboy will be back next week.